You're listening to 515, the Ultraman podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, co-race director of Ultraman Canada, Larry Ryan.
Thank you, MJ. Welcome to episode 9, everyone. Today I speak with two people from the early days of the World Championship. Steve King tells us who has the record for the most Ultraman races. A special guest drops in to talk about his Ultraman film. And we profile another UMC 2021 athlete. Before we begin today, I have an update about 515 sponsor Ultraman Canada. We are going ahead with the race this July 23rd through the 25th. Recent reopening guidelines from the government of British Columbia make it possible for us to hold the race without restrictions. Unfortunately, the federal government has not yet released any information about the opening of the border to international travelers, so UMC will have an all-Canadian field. We have allowed athletes to defer to 2022 or 2023. Brad and I are very excited about being able to offer this opportunity to race again, and at the same time, we're also terribly disappointed that we will not be able to invite the Ohana from around the world. Like many things over the past year and a half, our race will definitely have a different feel this year, and it will be smaller than expected, but at least it will go ahead. For those of you that have been waiting and hanging on for this decision, we are happy to have this finalized in a positive way. And for those of you that are unable to attend this year, we look forward to hosting you in 2022. This is an extra special treat today. My guests are two people who have watched the sport of Ultraman grow from the beginning. Today we have a man who has participated in 8 solo Ultraman events in Hawaii and his wife who has joined him for 2 relay teams at the event. She is an accomplished athlete in her own right, running marathons, dabbling in tri, and since they are in Hawaii, she has also paddled competitively for 40 years. When you say Ohana, this is basically their middle names. Joining me from Honolulu, Hawaii, the amazing Peter and Katy Bourne. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So as I said, you've watched this sport grow right from the beginning, kind of like one of your own children. And maybe you have the same amount of Ohana for it as you do for your children. If you'll just allow me to provide a little bit of background and set up here, I'll let you guys jump in just a second. So Peter, you're a child of Swedish parents who worked in the entertainment industry and raised you in Southern California in the 60s. So yep. I'm sure that you saw many a thing.
60s, yeah.
50s and 60s. I'm sure you saw many a thing that we probably shouldn't talk about here. But I know that you did dabble a little bit as a child actor as well. Is that true?
You know what? I bet you Steve told you that.
Yeah, I got that from Steve.
No, what happened was my mom was a script supervisor, so she was working behind the camera. My dad was an actor. And so my mom, when they first came to the country, when she first started working as a script supervisor in the early 50s, working on like the Burns and Allen show. I don't know if you're familiar with those. They're old shows that go back to the old TV days, yeah. Mm-hmm. And she did lots and lots of shows, but she did the Bob Cummings show also. And I was like 5, 6 years old. And so what they would do is they'd bring some of us kids in for the background, neighborhood kids. Oh, yeah. A lot of us were like people or kids from like people who worked on the show, and bring your kids in, they'll be background kids. So we'd come in and be neighborhood kids. And I actually got my actor's card when I was like 6 years old, but I never really used it. I never used it at all. I never got into it, as I got older until I started working. My mom was working on Magnum in the early 80s. And so I worked on Magnum. The original Magnum. Yeah, I worked on that. As a matter of fact, I was working on Magnum when I started my triathlon career. And Ultraman too. And matter of fact, there's some good stories with it because I was able to raise a lot of money from working on Magnum as a stand-in and part-time actor, a few bit parts, and raise money, do fundraising for multiple sclerosis through Ultraman. So all the years I would do Ultraman, I'd go to the crew and the cast, and I'd make money for multiple sclerosis through fundraising. It was really great. And it's a good feeling to do that when you can do something like that for some cause. Yeah, so I wasn't really a childhood actor in that sense. I'm just a ham, and I grew up, in show business. And so I grew up on stages. Like I grew up on the Beverly Hillbillies set. My mom did that show for 11 years. So, you pretty much grow up on the set when you're that young, and the years that she was on it and stuff. So, and I never really got into the business. I got my actor's card and I did a few things, but I never really jumped into it. My dad was an actor and I saw how tough it was. It's really a tough business, and a lot of ups and downs when you're in front of the camera. And when you're behind the camera, things are a lot, as far as a job, like my mom was much more consistent, So when you're an actor, you can go up and down with the business. I saw my dad go through a lot of frustrations, and I'm a natural ham anyway. So, it was natural for me to take drama classes just to kind of be goofy, but I was an athlete more than anything. So, yeah. But wasn't a childhood actor in terms of like somebody who was known or anything like that. I was in the background.
Well, that still counts. You get to meet those famous people, hang out with them.
Yeah.
So you're saying, like, as a child that one of the other things is that's when you started to fall in love with running as well. But growing up in Southern California, I guess you tended to follow your peers a little bit more, and you got into football instead of running.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And that led you to going to the University of Hawaii as a wide receiver, and gave you your education. You became a PE teacher and a coach. Like myself, I'm a PE teacher and a coach.
Yeah. Also, I teach social studies also.
Yeah. I was going to take social studies as well, but we had to take an English course. So I decided to make my minor English rather than waste the credit.
Well, let me tell you something. The real PE teacher is Kate. She's the 40-plus year full-on, she's one of the best, K to 12 PE teachers in our state. I mix my PE in with some other disciplines, but she's the real full-fledged 100%er. She's a genius at it.
So, Katy, then when you started your career with education, were you already an athlete as well? Like, is that what led you toward the PE side of it?
Definitely. I grew up in Minnesota, so I was speed skating and downhill skiing, and I ran track and did gymnastics and springboard diving. Anyway, I did that through college, track, diving, swimming, and skiing through college. After college, that was at the University of Wisconsin. I moved out west to ski and became a ski instructor. And then I came to just take a brief look at Hawaii with a backpack for about a week. And I haven't left since. I met this guy and kept prolonging the journey. And here we are going on, I don't know, we'll say
40 years,
12 grandchildren.
Yeah.
It's come a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. If I could, I just want to back up a little bit in that story. And I know that you did a little bit of time working in Southern California as well, but you came back to work in Hawaii, Peter. And so one day you're down at the beach, you're about to go out surfing. This is in 1978. And what's going on at the beach in 1978 when you're down there?
It's interesting because I was, I was going to go surf down at a place called Kaiser's. It's right down there down here in Waikiki area. And we have a thing here called the rough water swim. And the rough water swim is done in September every year. It's a 2.4, get that number, 2.4 mile swim. And it's famous here. And but that's in September. But I went down there. I go down there on, I think it was February 18th. I can remember that day. I went down there with two other guys. We were going surfing. And I saw another guy across the street who was surfing. And he said, "Hey, Peter." I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I walked up to him. And I noticed that something was going on here, like some type of a competition or whatever. And they had cars around, all different types of cars and bikes on top of it, strapped to them, boards. It's just different. I hey, what's going on here? And he goes, the guy says, well, they're doing some race. There's like 13 guys doing this race. I'm going, what are they doing? He says, somebody said that they're doing the rough water swim, and then they're going to bike around the island, and then they're going to do the Honolulu Marathon course. And I said, that's stupid. Why would anybody? Are you kidding me? The guy said, I think that's what they're doing. I said, that's insane. That's unbelievable. I didn't really think much of it. So I walked in on the first Ironman, I thought this was nuts. And then within a couple years, I had gotten interested in, I think I told you, when I was living in Sweden growing up, I heard about all the great distance runners and, Zatopek and all these guys and stuff. And I just started getting interested back again into running again. I had played football. I wasn't going to play professional football or anything. So I was getting into running, and I started doing like ultras, kind of 50Ks and stuff like that. And, not a lot of marathons, but longer stuff, And then Kate, I did that through the late 70s and into the early 80s. And when I met Kate, she was one of the directors down at this place called the Oahu Athletic Club, and I was running for them. And that's how we met, was down there. And then we had this race that went around the island, 133 miles. It was a relay race called the Perimeter Run. They don't do it anymore, but it was really, really big. And that's how I met Kate, was doing that. But then a couple of years later, I just started, I saw the first, the Ironman on television, and I got a bike like in 1981, and I started riding it a little bit, but I was mostly running. And then, the reason why I have Kate with me here is because she was with me right from the very start, and it gets back to the Ohana thing you're talking about. Cause, as the race is the Ohana thing, our family started the same way. When I did my first Ultraman in 84, Kate was 3 months pregnant with our oldest daughter now, Kai. And I kind of look at that, the Ohana thing there, just starting our Ohana, and Kate was, supporting me all the way through it. And, she got into the marathon running much more than I did. Right. And everything. But yeah, I walked in on that first Ironman and thought it was crazy. And then I look at where it's come to now. And then my experiences with Ironman, because when I got into the late 80s and into the 90s, the family started getting a little bit bigger. The kids are getting older. And so I figured I didn't want to just keep racing and everything. I wanted to do something else with the sport. So that's when I got into officiating and worked my way up to the regional coordinator and a Cat 1 official. And that pretty much had me in Kona every year for about 20 years officiating during that race, and seeing where that had come to, and then racing it myself, and just remembering when it was just an application, a race application, and then you had to qualify, and then it was okay. And then you get the lottery, and then it just absolutely exploded. And then with all the other things too, insurance happening, with the sport, and just the whole corporate takeover of it, Right. And that's, that's one thing we'll talk about. We've talked about before how Ultraman kind of came off of Ironman because of the tie-ins with people in Kona and stuff like that. But Ultraman has managed to stay, really family-like and tight, and it's not a big major corporation, owned by China, anything, right? Not that China's bad in that sense, or that China's fine that they own it, but I'm just saying, it's pretty much a local thing here, and it started here, and then it's expanded also in its way, into Canada and all the other places that we've had it, right? And it's had some ups and downs and stuff like that, and it's rode like anything. But I'm just super proud to see where I was that day in February, see that race come to where it's come to. And then the one that means more to me than anything is Ultraman. It's seeing, where it's come to and the different stories that you hear about people. It's like I said, it's a metaphor for life, really. It's a book, every year you have a race, and you have 40 contestants, and you have 40 chapters. And I just love listening to, why people did the race. It's like when I'd ask some of my athletes in clinics, I said, give them a questionnaire. Why are you doing triathlons? Not necessarily Ultraman, but they start doing a clinic, and why are you doing it? And you get all this cross section of reasons why they did it. And, then you get a race like Ultraman, and you start finding out international people. You got 40 people in a race, and, potentially for that. And you got like 20 different countries,
Oh, yeah.
and people with all these different reasons for why they did it. Sometimes you see that balance in life, the good things about it. And you also could see the negative things about it, that how it can take somebody and make them really selfish and forget family. And that's not what Ultraman's all about. Ultraman's all about family, So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea behind this podcast as well, is to get the conversations going and talking to different people from around the world and hearing their background, their story. Why do they do this? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I just going on, even in like our two of our kids got married in the same year, when I had to get up and talk, I used the AOK as the main thing for the marriage and the whole family thing. So I use so much of this race, for other things,
Right.
Yeah.
So Kate, when you moved to Hawaii, was it Aspen you were in previous to that? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were working, if I got this right, you were working as a ski instructor and aerobics instructor, running clinics, things like that. So
exactly.
At that time, did you own a Jane Fonda workout tape? Like, were you running around in the leggings and the?
I was in the leggings and the leggings, but I wasn't the Jane Fonda. I was a little more hardcore, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. So you said earlier you came over to Hawaii and you were only going to go for a week and check it out, and you never left. Tell me a little bit about this relationship that the two of you have, and how you got hooked into staying in Hawaii, and then because of Peter, perhaps maybe making a life of it.
Pete and I met at the Perimeter Relay, which is a run around the island, and in the middle of the night, there's a guy on a pole yodeling and singing and being absolutely insane. And I'm like, who is this crazy idiot? And a friend of ours had introduced us, I think right before or right after, at any rate, and had said, okay, you two need to meet. This will be a good thing. So at the time, I'd never run a marathon. So I thought, it's December. Skiing doesn't get that great anyway. I'll just stay for the beginning of December, run the marathon, and get back to my skiing, because that's what I love to do. And then we dated and got closer. And I said, well, I'll just stay 2 weeks. I'll stay, maybe a month. And the rest is history. There's 4 children. There's going on 12 grandchildren. And so that's what got me into paddling, because I couldn't ski. So I'm like, okay, I need another toy. So I started outrigger canoe paddling. It's a great sport.
And so that was your first marathon, I guess. But then you actually really took to the sport of marathoning, and you have, was it a 3:12 as your best marathon? Yeah. So obviously that's something that you took to, and is that something that you're still pursuing now?
I recently had a hip replacement, and I was hoping to come back, but I think I put it off so long that my knee and a few skiing accidents is not in any shape to keep running. So unfortunately, I fill it with 1-man and 6-man canoeing, and now I'm walking, which I said I'd never do, but I'm doing a lot of hiking.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let's jump back into the Ultraman story then for a second, Peter. So things are going along well for you personally. The two of you are together. You're dabbling in these triathlon arts of cycling and swimming, and you've got your running background, and then you heard about the Ultraman, and you saw the results from, I guess it was the first Ultraman that was done. And and then it triggered something in you. Is that right?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because the year before I had done my first triathlon, and Kate was with me, And I had done a couple other ones. I did one on Molokai, and then I had seen the year before, after 83, I saw this thing in the paper. It just said Ultraman. And I looked at the distance and I thought, what? You got to be kidding me. This is not serious. God, I'd never seen anything that long, but there's just something about it that said, this sounds like something really unreal, So I talked with Kate about it, and like we talked about it more through into 84.
Right.
And then I just kind of said, I'm going to do it, and I got in, I entered it. But that goes into the whole thing about, at that point in time, training for it versus training now. Talk about winging it. And not only, I didn't even do an Ironman before it. I went and did a half Ironman. The longest thing I did was a half Ironman. And then I went and did an Ultraman. And I paid the price. Mm-hmm. I paid the price big time. I mean,
no, the escort paid the price.
Yeah, the first year was
always.
Oh my God. I'm telling you, it was an eye opener. It was an eye opener. But once I did it, the suffering, I realized I just didn't really know what I was doing. None of us did at that time. I mean, mm-hmm. The sport was still so fledgling at that point. And then Ironman had only been around a few years. And then
right.
Curtis comes up with this thing, it's like, wow, unreal. So it did, spark some creative juices. And I look back at my logs. I've kept logs. And I can't believe how I overtrained, how we, there was no books to read on it. There was, all you did was kind of maybe take something from cycling and swimming and running, that kind of thing. And I was running anyway. Mm-hmm. And I was just an average swimmer, even though I surfed a lot. I wasn't, super great. So I'm good. I can swim strong, but wasn't like super fast. Right. So I just looked at things like that to try to get as much information as I could. And then guys I was training with, let's do this, let's do that. And
trial and error. Yeah,
exactly. And you paid the price for it too,
mm-hmm.
but definitely.
And I'm sure, like, having done 8 races, you can't compete at your peak performance every time. Like, it doesn't matter what your training plan says as to when you're trying to peak. Every athlete knows that you're only as good as how you're feeling on the day of the race, and whatever you did in your training is completely foreign to that day. So, having done 8 of them, can you tell us about some of the highs and some of the lows that you experienced in your races?
Well, that's what's really incredible about the race, because it's again, this whole thing about life. I mean, I had some of the worst. I mean, I've had great success there, and then I had, the 180 type thing. So that first year was an eye opener. I don't think I ever suffered like that ever again in the race. I never did. And out of the 8, I think I only completed 4, because the other ones I think I was injured. I got injured twice with the knee. Once I was out on the first day. I was just toast. The swim was tough, and I forget what year that was, but I ended up in the back of an ambulance going down to Hilo with IVs in my arm. I was just gone. And then 1 year, I had hypothermia also. And then 1 year, I don't know if I said this, but you talk about just the highs and lows. You train. You tell yourself you're going to start training, and you train all those months, and you think you know what you're doing, and you've done a few, and you spend all the money, the vans, and get your people over there, your team and your crew and everything, mm-hmm. and you do all that, and then go to bed the night before the race, Thanksgiving night, and woke up with 103 temperature in the morning and never even went to the start line. It's like, I was just like, seriously? You can't go and race a race like that with the temperature. And that was a bummer in itself. It's just like, just what do you do? It was, and then other races too, that, like in 86 was a banner year for me, was really good, because I did Ironman. A buddy of mine, my best buddy, Noble Beck, who also did the race, Ultraman. He and I did a race in Minnesota called Border to Border. It was a two 2-person relay team. And it went from like the Iowa-Minnesota border to the Canadian border, all the way to the boundary waters.
Okay.
And the first 2 days were 200 miles of cycling, so 400 altogether. Then the third day was a 50-mile run through the woods. And then the fourth day was a 50-mile canoe paddle down the Vermilion River with 11 portages.
Wow.
So we did that in August. And then October did Ironman, and that was my best Ironman. And then 6 weeks later did Ultraman and had one of my better Ultramans in that sense. So, yeah, I mean, I've kind of been
because you didn't have time to train. You were racing so much that you weren't overtrained.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I've gone through everything. You can go through it, in the race. And Kate's been there to support me I never would have been the same without Kate. She's there the whole time with me the whole time. And then it was actually one of my ideas that I had injected into the race plan was to try to do relays, and it kind of floundered after a while. But we did it. We did it for a couple of years. And Kate and I had told myself I'm going to stop running in the 90s. Just I'm not going to run anymore. I'm just going to stick to cycling and swimming and that kind of stuff. And so with the relay, I could do the cycling, had somebody else do, and Kate could do the run. So that's how she ended up doing Ultraman runs and being able to do Ultraman and stuff. So we've covered everything you could cover, really. As far as doing the race, as myself as an individual, and the relays, and being together and doing it together, and
Kate, let me just pick up on that a little bit. Like, as a crew member for all these races, like that's my background as well. I was always the crew member. You obviously play an integral part of making sure that he gets to the finish line, and his capabilities because you've watched him train day by day. You know everything inside and out. One of the things we do on the podcast is we have people come on and just tell crew stories, those behind the scenes kind of little tidbits of what really happens out on the course. Do you have a favorite crew story that you could share with us?
I think I have a few. I know the first year I was pregnant, and we had to carry the bike. We had a little rental car. So I had the surfboard of his paddling escort on the roof, and I had the bike on the back, and I had stuff in the back seat, and it was just me and being very high, pregnant, and running in and out, doing all that. Then, because we have no family in the island, all these races, as the family grew with the kids, they came along. So they're little buggers, and I'm giving them water bottles, and they're 2 and 3 years old. There's no way they're going to make the catch. I'm trying to keep him on the road, but actually give him his bottle, but let the girls think that they're actually giving bottles and sandwiches. And then, they run off in the woods and whatever. So as they got older, though, when I started running, my son came along with me, and he ran a little bit with me. And then I look out in the lava fields past Javi, and there he is running with a goat across the lava out there.
That's the volleyball player when he was small. Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, try, come back. And I'm still going down the road trying to race on. Yeah, and Noble Beck, his buddy, one year helped me escort, and he was just beside himself. Well, how can the kids can't get out? And I go, they have to get out. They have to run. We have to get up to the next space and let the kids out for a run, because I got to throw them all back in the car and get going again. So we got to play catch up. So it definitely was a family affair. So the kids probably have even better stories.
Now, obviously, having two athletic parents, they've received now both the gift of nature and nurture, because you've given them the genes and you've shown them the way. So it's not surprising that you have 4 very athletic children as well. Can you just maybe give me like the 2-line bio of each of your children as to what their athletic pursuits ended up being, and then maybe a little bit about, do you think their growing up around Ultraman actually influenced them in any way with how far they got?
Definitely. Definitely. Now hearing their stories, going back to their experience of Ultraman with us and growing up with us and listening to their interviews, I'm like, oh, okay, it definitely had an impact. Lars, the oldest, is very much into mountain biking and speed biking, and he's in Las Vegas. And Kai, and we call her the fish, she played water polo through college, was an incredible swimmer, is really, really strong in the water. Matter of fact, I was training for, I think my first, or a triathlon anyway, and I'm swimming along with her thinking, oh, I'm keeping up, I'm doing great. And I lift my head a little higher and I'm like, oh my God, she's in front of me doing the backstroke. Little brat. But yeah, I kept my ego in check right there. Britt was our super soccer player. She played all through college, Montana, then back here at the university, and then coached one of our elite high school teams. Yeah. And she still swims, but she's about to have her third baby. So she's working on that. And our son did all sorts of sports as well. All the kids paddled the canoe. I mean, that's been a big hub of connection between all of us and good gathering place. But Tri has done all sorts of sports, basketball, and volleyball is his main sport now. He's a professional volleyball player, beach volleyball. He did indoor, went professional, and then now is going professional beach. So we're professional spectators.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're giving back to them. Yeah. So now we're aiding them on the court.
Yeah. It all comes around in the ultra world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does come around. I mean, thank goodness that's one sport where you really can do it as a family. Yeah. And your family just grows, meeting everyone and hanging out together and telling stories and supporting one another. I love that, whatever someone needs out there, whoever's nearest, nearby, or with the equipment or the food needed or whatever else. I know when Pete was reviving one year, we're on the highway heading back to Kona, middle of lava, and he says, I think I'd like a hamburger. We kind of look at each other like, oh my God, you want to kill him, but you want him to keep running. So luckily his sister has joined us. So she hops in a rental car and drives, I don't know, an hour and a half to go get a bloody hamburger for the guy. We're like, a hamburger? In the middle of the run? You got to be kidding. That's what he wanted.
And by the time that hamburger came back, he wanted something different, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's amazing, Yeah, you're supposed to eat all the really good food and everything like that. And just your body says, no, I'm a firm believer in that. If you say I want it, do it. Psychologically, it helps. Yeah. No, definitely. But I think
and the crew is going to do it for you. They're going to find a way to get what you need and what you want.
Absolutely. The crew is, we'll go into that because you just can't do the race without that crew. You just can't it's they're the life and soul of it. The athlete is the heartbeat kind of thing. And they're the, you can't do it without them. A good one is really good to have too. Yeah. Especially crews like yourself, what you're doing, what you can do so much for an athlete, even if you're, let's say, it's not an athlete, a friend of yours you're doing, maybe somebody you've asked to crew for, you don't even know them, and you can give them so much information because if you've crewed, that's just what they need is that type of, information to help you along, help them along. So,
and I guess I'll go with one last question for you guys. Since you have been able to watch the sport grow from its infancy, like when you when you walked onto the beach and saw Iron Man the first time, and then the Ultraman, you were right there at the beginning. What do you think about how it's changed over the years? I mean, you were saying earlier that you don't think Ultraman has changed very much. Iron Man obviously got very corporate, but just give me some insights into what you've seen about the changes, whether positive or maybe something that you weren't happy with as well. But
you mean for Ultraman or the sport? Oh, Ultraman. Yeah. Well, the whole family thing. I think the reason the mission statement that Curtis kind of put out there at the start, with the whole Aloha, Ohana, and Kokua, that's the main focus there. And the other thing was no money, right? And I kind of went through some things with that. I said why when I was talk with him over the years and race directing myself and being a race director and that kind of stuff, like if you did this, maybe we get more or something like that. But I think that's definitely why Iron Man got bigger. I mean, there's no way Iron Man would have gotten bigger if they didn't put money into it. And a good story about that is there wasn't any money in it, and Valerie didn't want to have money in it. To my knowledge, it's just at the very start. She kind of, she wanted to keep it tight and family kind of thing like that, as tight as she could. And finally, it got to the point where, I think she had, I haven't talked to Valerie in years, but enough people talked to her when she realized that maybe we have to kind of move forward a little bit more and maybe start offering prize money and stuff like that. And that was the start of it right there. Spider web effect, when you offer money and stuff like that. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that in that sense. It is what it is. You look at like Ultraman, it just doesn't have that there. The intimacy where people know each other, and you come back every year, or if you can come back and qualify and come back and get in, that's just great to come back and see people. Iron Man, not like that anymore. I mean, with your friends maybe, but there's 5,000 people or 3,000 people in a race now, and you don't know everybody there. It's definitely a corporate situation. And I like that Ultraman is the way it is, in that sense. I think
people aren't in it for the money and the reward in the end. I think they're in it for the experience and the rewards of companionship, friendship, Ohana, Kokua.
I think
really for everybody. Why else escort that for hours and weekends? And it takes us. The volunteers are giving up so much because they get back threefold in the love and appreciation and the friendships that last forever.
And I think the other side of that is if there are people out there that are currently in the Ironman world and they are enjoying the sport, but maybe not enjoying the culture, and they've heard of Ultraman and they're like, so they have this little family, a little clique of people that travel around and see each other. I just want to dispel that myth as well, because it's not, even though everybody seems to know each other, it's not because it's a clique. It's just like once you join one of these races, you get enveloped in it, and you are one of those people. It's nothing. There's nothing special. There's no special group. There's no secret handshake. It's just like if you come to the race, you get to be part of it.
Yeah. See, Ironman, you can go there with your friends and race year after year, but you're not even. And it's a one-day thing, and you not even see them on the course and know what they're going through in a way. But Ultraman, man, you're racing. And you have other people you're racing against, or, if you're racing against the clock or whatever, and you see them going through stuff. You hear their stories, and Ironman, you only see the stories that are, like, media type stuff like that. I think what I was thinking about was the thing that I've always thought, why can't we, and I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying I would like to have seen the race more, advertised in terms of being like on a sports show or something like that, where they take, an hour and show, like, we're going to show you Ultraman Canada I mean, it's filmed and have it in the media, just like they film Ironman. Now it takes money to do that. I know that. And that's bottom line right there. That's probably in the past why, we don't have a lot of that stuff.
Maybe even highlighting the escorts and what goes on in some of those stories.
Yeah.
Because that's such a huge part of everything, and reasons that the escorts keep coming back, and the escorts eventually want to race it because they've been there, done that, seen it, and it entices them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it works for everybody in a way that those one day high profile races just don't have the intimacy amongst all the characters involved that this race does.
Well, hopefully my podcast is filling a little bit of that void.
Good.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said that earlier, is that you doing this is really good. I think it's really good. I think it's get the word out there. Any way to do it is good in a positive way. Yeah, definitely. So. Well,
I'd like to thank you both very much for coming and sharing some of the history of the race, as only people who were there can share it, and sharing your stories about your family and how it's influenced your life so much. And really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you betcha. Anytime you need any help with it, we're going to be part of Ultraman. Get back on track here this year, hopefully, and into next year, and get up to Canada and see you. And if you need any help or anything like that, we'll come up there and help you out.
Excellent.
Or something
We'd love
like
to
that.
have you.
To get to Oahu, our door's always open.
Right.
Yeah, if you come out here, you're always welcome to come and stay with us.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Aloha.
Well, Peter was just saying that someone should do a doc or a movie to show what Ultraman is all about. And my special guest today sort of did that. While it's not about what Ultraman is, it certainly shares the aloha, ohana, and kokua of the event through one man's unexpected journey to the Ultraman World Championship finish line. The film originally intended to follow his journey for a year, but was sidetracked into a completely different film that spanned 4 years. On June the 8th, he will be joining Steve King for an online Zoom meeting and viewing of the film and a Q&A afterward. I thought I would invite him here today to let you know about the film and the event that they're holding. My special bonus guest today is Ultraman Scott McDermott, star of the film Living the Warrior Code. Hi, Scott. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. It's great to be here.
Before we get talking about your event, and maybe without spoiling the story of the film, which we'll get to in a few minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about your history with Ultraman leading up to the idea of even making a film?
Sure. I remember sitting in Penticton at my friend Cheryl's house, and I met Nick Mallett, who's a kind of a legend in the Ultraman world. And I was getting ready for Ironman Canada 2010. And we were just chatting it up, and Nick was like, "Oh, Mike, you should give Ultraman a try." And I was like, "Shut up. Those guys are nuts." And we just went back and forth, and he just opened me to the possibility of this insane race. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I signed up for Ultraman Canada 2011. I signed up, I think, the next week. And so Ultraman Canada 2011, of course, I met Jane and Steve, and it just met all these crazy, great people, and just had the race of my life. I was 6th overall, and I was 20 minutes from 2nd place. And I had just found my new passion. I had done, 6 or 7 Ironmans, which I really love, but Ultraman was just the family and the people. I just absolutely was enamored with this race. And then my wife got pregnant, and so we did that thing. And then in 2013, I cashed in my kind of permission slip to go to the World Championships in 2013, and had just a next level great experience at the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. I think it was 21st. Yeah, I was 21st in the world, and just had a phenomenal experience. But I was so overwhelmed by the challenge of that course. I wanted to go back in 2015 and race. And so I'd hired a new coach, Craig Percival, and was just training super hard. And like a lot of people from Ultraman, you alluded to it, so many of us have thought, man, this is such a great little race and nobody's ever heard of it. Mm-hmm. And it's so next level. It's so different than Ironman. It's this Ohana, it's this family. Like, we all care about each other, and every crew helps every other crew, and every athlete wants every athlete to do well. And I just thought, boy, it'd be really cool to make a film and share this just crazy, rich, amazing experience that is Ultraman, which is this race that's been going on almost as long as Iron Man. Nobody's ever heard of it.
So tell us a little bit about what your film's about then.
Well, in 2015, I was racing hard. I was trying to be kind of top 5. Like I was really aggressively racing and pushing my own limits as hard as I could. And I was going on the backside of the mountain, the areas where the 3 gulches are. I'd passed the 3rd gulch, and I was just coming through, kind of getting close to Texas Malasada's donut restaurant, which everybody knows in Ultraman. And I was coming down, nothing too steep or whatever, but I was going about just under 60K an hour, according to the Garmin, but over 40 miles an hour. And it was raining lightly. And I had just passed a couple guys. I'd passed Adam Fox and Peter Hudson, both Australians. And Peter and I were just having a little bit of a chat. And then I just, as I passed him, I put my head down and got into aero and just dropped the hammer and was cruising along. And I was told later that there was algae on the bridge deck. Just the spot that I was in, we know kinetically from my crash that my wheel slid out to the right, and I put my hand down and I sprained fingers in my wrist, and I broke my arm in half, and I shattered my shoulder. I broke it in 4 pieces, and I broke 5 ribs. And then I was obviously, you fall off a bike at 70K an hour. I started to cartwheel down the bridge, and I busted up my knee, and I tore a bunch of things and split my eye open and scarred the side of my head. And my helmet wasn't done up tightly enough, because I was one of these idiots that, I don't like my helmet strap being tight because it bothers me. Yeah, well, what bothers you worse, buddy? My helmet rotated, and I slammed my skull into the concrete, and I broke my skull open, and I had a really bad brain injury. So I woke up in Oahu 3.5 days later in the brain trauma unit with no idea where I was. So that race didn't go to plan.
Yeah, and so your original film plan was just to kind of follow that year of training going into the race, and it was going to be about getting to the end and getting to the finish line. And when you didn't get to the finish line because of your accident, and to not underplay it at all, it was a near-death accident. You decided pretty much right away that you were still going to get back on that horse and go. And so you extended your filming, and the film changed and became more about how you overcame the injuries and got back into that race again.
Yeah, it became about the whole journey. Like the original idea for the film was to just show off this incredible group of people in this wonderful race, and to show this process of this regular guy from a small town in Alberta, because I don't look like a triathlete. I'm 5'10", I've got short, stocky legs and a long back. I'm 200 pounds. I don't look like a triathlete. Most of the guys I'm racing against weigh $140, $160. I've got a 40 to 100 watt disadvantage on the bike, but I train really hard, and I thought it'd be really fun to show what an average person could achieve and just show how great this race was. And yeah, Drew knew to keep filming after the crash happened. And then we met in the hospital when I got back to Canada, and I was getting all the metal parts put in and stuff like that. And I just said, I want to keep filming. And like you said, one of my first words out of my mouth in the hospital was like, okay, well, we'll heal from this and we'll come back next year. Like that was like,
and that's not the way it was looking at the time, according to the doctors.
No, that's not how that was. But they didn't x-ray far enough up my arm. So they said my wrist was sprained, but they didn't know my arm was broken. And they said my shoulder would heal. But by the time I got to Canada, it had just, all the bone pieces had moved and traveled. And it was just it was a mess. And they didn't notice that the cartilage was torn and my MCL was torn on my right knee. And they didn't do enough diagnostics to realize I had one of the worst brain injuries you could get. So that all got diagnosed when I got back home to Canada.
And did you have to stay in Hawaii for a while for that swelling of the brain to go down in order to fly? And
yeah, I was in Hawaii. I was in the brain trauma unit for about 3.5, 4 days. And then I flew back to Kona and had to be about another week, which worked out with our travel plans. And then I had to go to a doctor and get cleared to travel home, that the brain swelling was okay and stuff like that. Although I have to tell you that check-in was absolutely when I got back to Canada, they were just in shock that I was let out of the hospital and allowed to fly. But whatever, it worked out.
And so you continued on, you do your comeback, you make your movie. And this is, I mean, we don't want to give away too much because we want people to tune in and see what happens. There's obviously a lot of struggles along the way. And I think you handled it really well as far as just being really open and honest about some of the things that you struggled with as well along the way and how you overcame those. So I think for people to tune in and watch the film just to pick up on those things would be really good. Anybody who's interested in Ultraman would enjoy watching your film, or anybody who's an Iron Man would enjoy watching your film. But even just anybody who is interested in watching a good story would enjoy watching this film. So tell us a little bit about your online event that you're doing with Steve King, and like when it is, how it works, and how people can tune in and then ask you some questions there.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really excited to do that. So with Steve King on June 8th, we're going to basically play the film at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's an 82-minute film. Then we'll give a little bit of a bathroom break. And then Steve King and I are just going to have a podcast-style interview chat for however it organically goes. It might be 30 minutes. It might be 40. I mean, we won't know. And it'll be on Zoom. So it's pretty easy to find the Zoom link if you can just look for me, www.scottyfit.com, SCOTTYFIT.com. And I've got the link posted there for the Zoom call, and it's free. The movie's free, and the participation is free. So it's just going to be really great. I mean, if you know Steve King at all, he's the voice of Ultraman. He's the voice of Iron Man. He's just the most phenomenal human being. He's like an encyclopedia of everything endurance. And so it's going to be just a great chat. Him and I have already kind of talked in advance a couple times about it, but it'll be a free-form conversation about what was going on at the time and what was going on the Sunday after I crashed, and Steve's thoughts on it and the comeback. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really great chat.
Yeah. And will the viewers also be able to chime in with some questions if they want it?
100%. Yeah. The chat dialogue box will be open, and if people have questions they want to ask of Steve, then we'll be definitely relaying those or bring them onto the mic to ask the questions of myself or Steve. So it'll be definitely an open forum.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have lots of people tuning in for that because the ultra world is pretty tight, and once word gets out of something like this, they'll all be in. I know you've had quite a few views on it already, and you were touring it around a little bit as well. And I'm sure, being that it took you 4 years to film this thing, it probably you kind of self-financed this along with some Indiegogo kind of things and stuff like that. So is there a way for people to give back to appreciate your film?
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, it's all self-financed, myself and a couple of buddies. We did a little bit of crowdfunding, but it never got us too far. But we just believed in the project. And at this point, yeah, when you go to warriorcodefilm.com, there's a little button you can click and you can make a PayPal donation to whatever amount you feel like if you enjoyed the film. So yeah, we for a while we were running it on Vimeo, and it was $10 to watch it. And I just thought, okay, this is stupid. I want people to watch the film, and if they like it, then they can donate after if they feel like it. So I just flipped it over and made it that way.
All right, that's great. Well, that's June the 8th, you and Steve King on Zoom. I've posted that on the 515 Facebook page previously. I'll post it again before the event, and I'll have the link in the show notes as well from this podcast. So everybody will be able to find you.
Awesome.
All right, well, thanks a lot for dropping by and telling us about your film.
You bet. Thank you so much, Larry. I really appreciate you having me on.
Coming up in episode 10, I'm going to chat with Brad Sawa about his athletic career and how it was that he became the person to bring the Ultraman back to Canada. Then, in episode 11, the final episode of the season, Brad, myself, and Steve King will all get together to bring you a race preview for the 2021 Ultraman Canada. Season 2 will kick off with a race recap, and we will begin to introduce the 2022 field of Ultraman Canada.
And now, here's another Steve King story.
The next athlete I'm going to refer to is the most prolific Ultraman around. Some of you are obviously aware of the fact that someone like John Wragg of Mississauga, Ontario, has done like 250 plus Ironmen in his career. However, a number of people have said, well, who is the most prolific Ultraman competitor and finisher? And this gentleman has done 19 of them, more than anyone else. And they've all been on the Big Island. He began his Ultraman career in 2001 and has gone right through to 2019. But unfortunately, as many of you know, the 2020 edition has been cancelled. So he's waiting to do his 20th on the Big Island. On 2 occasions, he's placed 3rd overall. He's been 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th, 22nd. His personal best is 25:13:33. He's done over 200 ultra races in his career. He loves to do ultra runs. 13 times out the Western States with a personal best there of 22:13:13. He's done the Hurt 100 in Hawaii, of course. He's done the Wasatch 100. He also, in 2018, did the I Am Tough for the Idaho Trail Race. And he did that with the 3-time world Ultraman champion, Amber Monforte. And no doubt her husband, Ryan Weeble, was there along with their son, Enzo. In 2019, he came up to Yakima Valley in Washington State, did the Cascade Crest 100. He's had some incredible crew over the years as well, including Jackie Hofmann. He's had Lauren Fithian, who won the women's Ultraman title in 2004. He's had Phil Makin on his crew a number of times, and Phil's crewed about 20 times in his career on the Big Island. He's had Ellis Andrews on his crew, who's been a finisher in Canada as well as on the Big Island. And he's also had the pleasure of celebrating a major birthday in 2017 on day number 1 when he celebrated his 50th birthday, as he was born on the 24th of November, 67. He's part of a great family, the Ultraman family. In fact, he's part of also what is known as the Rat Pack. And he's come to Canada a number of times as part of his business and met up with members of the Rat Pack in different locations. Marty Raymond, Tony O'Keefe, and I know he also was in Banff once and met up with Sheena Miller there as well. She's been 6th at the Worlds and been a winner of Ultraman Canada. So it's great to see that. Not only has he been part of the family, but he's helped with all sorts of IT issues and photographs. And he has the most excellent website. If you're interested in finding out more about ultra racing in any way, shape or form, including the results, go to realendurance.com, which is run by the incredible, most prolific Ultraman of all time, Mr. Gary Wang of the US.
I have a quick request. If you enjoy listening to the 515 podcast, please tell 2 of your friends to also listen and subscribe. And join me on Facebook, where I give previews of upcoming guests. Finally, if you want to know about any of the races or people mentioned during the show, I provide links to those in the show notes at the official website. For example, Scott's link to the Zoom event with Steve King will be there for this episode. Now, the Ultraman Canada Athlete Profile. Today's Ultraman Canada Athlete in Profile has past experience racing in Penticton at the Challenge in 2016, the ITU Long Course World Championship in 2017, and the 520 event in 2019. He has raced in Kona 4 times, and he fuels as a plant-based athlete. I am happy to welcome to 515 podcast from Vancouver, BC, Barry Berg. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, you do pretty well as an age grouper. I looked at your stats, and you've hit the podium in a number of races. And obviously, that's how you get to Kona, is that you do well. And you've finished as high as 21st in your age group there, if I'm correct.
At Kona, yeah.
Yeah. So would you mind, for the people that are listening, do you want to share your current age group and then maybe tell us a few highlight podiums of things that you're most proud of?
So I'm 54. So I'm in, like for Ironman, these are age groups, it's 50 to 54. And then I think in the ultra distance races, I think the category is a little bit bigger from 50 to 59.
Yeah.
So And I guess, some podiums that were 21st at Kona was, cool. I had really wanted to get a lot better than that. It's so hard for me to run in the heat, and it's so hard to appreciate how hot and humid, and it just destroys you. So I think I actually got off the bike there third or maybe fourth of my age group on that race. And then just, within, I don't know, probably 2 kilometers, I was just torched just because of the heat.
Right.
So everybody talks about, it's funny because people talk about how, like the energy lab, it seems like, the energy lab's where it's going to suck your energy. But for me, Elite Drive, like it just feels like it's hot. There's no wind. Like I'm destroyed going down Elite Drive on the start of that race every single time. And I've tried it a few times where I just thought, I'm going to really take it easy this time. I'm just going to, go, so mellow right from the start. And you can't too, because you get off the bike and you're like, I'm in Hawaii. I'm in the World Championships, and it's my fault, my bad.
Yeah. Or are there some other races where maybe you've hit that first or second spot that you're really proud of and that were interesting races?
Yeah. So, so there was a race that I did which was called a swim run race, and one of the Attilo series. And this one was in the Isles of Scilly. And so you do that as a partner. So my partner, Elliot Rushden, and I went to the Isles of Scilly, which is a funny story because we originally thought that we were actually going to Sicily. And you look at the pictures, the Isles of Scilly are actually small little islands, like a group of isles off the probably, I guess, southern tip of England. And so, but they've still got sort of that white tropical sand. And so you look at the pictures and you think, this is going to be like a tropical race. And you kind of look at the way Scilly is spelled and you think, we're going to Sicily. So
did you figure it out before you booked your flight?
We did. And we thought, what the heck, we're going to go anyways. But the thing is, the water temperature is like 11 or 12 degrees and not at all tropical. So anyways, we went there to do this race, and the day before the race, they had what they called the sprint distance, and Elliot and I thought, just because we're there, we might as well just sign up and do the sprint distance, and then do the long distance the next day. And the long distance is, I can't recall off the top of my head, but they're usually like 8 or 9K of swimming, and then, like 35, 40K of running, but it's all split up. Mm-hmm. So, but a fairly long race, but we did the race the day before, and we won that. So we were that was a really fun podium.
Yeah, that's just gravy on the one that you actually showed up for.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We thought we were getting our money's worth to do this extra race. I think another podium that I had that was pretty fun was there's this race that goes from, it's a running race, and it goes from Squamish, the fish hatchery. It's called the Tenderfoot Boogie. It's like a 50K. It's actually a 55K run. You don't, it's called a 50K, but you find out afterwards that it's longer.
Right.
So anyways, you go from Squamish up to Whistler, and I won that and didn't realize I had won until after I crossed the finish line, because the guy in front of me got lost. So I knew there was a guy in front of me. I got, second, and when I saw him coming after me, I was like, what the heck? That was pretty cool. So I'll take it.
Yeah, that's one way to get up the podium.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. With these swim run races, you've done a few of them now, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you physically tethered to your partner when you do these, or you just have to stay within a certain distance? How do those work?
So yeah, it's your choice if you want to be physically tethered. And usually I think it's a good idea for the swim, because there's almost always one swimmer that's going to be stronger than the other. So some people choose to keep the tether on while they're running as well. But the bottom line is, for the most part, you're supposed to stay within, I think it's like, I want to say 10 meters, I think, 10 meters or maybe 10 feet, but fairly close. You're not allowed one person. You have to stay in proximity the whole time.
Right.
So for me, when I was racing with Elliot Rushden, he's like just a phenomenal swimmer. So being tethered to him was a lifeline. And then another time I did one with another partner, Christine Fletcher, who is a super good swimmer too, but we stayed tethered. Christine and I actually won overall a race in Bellingham. So there's the male race, the female race, and then there's a mixed race, but Christine and I actually won that mixed race. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is being tethered for the swim is a big advantage.
For you. Maybe not
For
the
me,
person, not the person who's leading you.
No. So for me with Elliot, and Christine and I were very similar. I mean, it depends on who's in better shape at the time.
Yeah.
But it also keeps you together just in terms of, especially with swimming, like if it makes it a lot easier for the person behind to not worry about sighting or anything. They just, I mean, literally you can't go anywhere. You're on the rope. So, yeah.
And with these swim run races, since you've done a few of these now, what would you say is the difference between triathlon and swim run? Like, what's drawing you to the swim run races?
So triathlon has, the transitions are, each leg of the triathlon is distinct in the sense that you swim, you transition, you do the bike, you transition, you do the run. The swim runs, it's the entire race is the changing from swim to run to swim to run to swim to run. So it's just that mixing it up all the time, it makes it so interesting. And I think the other part about that is the ones that we've done, you go from one place to another place. So it's like you're transporting yourself through and all the ones that I've done have all been in sort of trail or wooded type settings. So you get that real great feel of running in the trails and swimming open water, two things that I think, not to sound super hippy dippy or anything, but there's such a great feeling to just, being in the woods and being in the open water. I mean, really makes you feel alive. And then I guess the final thing is because you do it with a partner, you get to share this experience, the entire thing with somebody else. So I just think that's sort of like the icing on the cake.
Yeah. And I guess you get a little bit of that with the ultra racing and you have a crew. So you have someone to share it with, but they're not pounding the pavement with you.
No, well, I mean, until you get to they actually, you're 100% correct, but they do pound a lot of pavement. I think at the end of one of my crew, Matty Schroeder, put his Garmin on for the race because, they're handing you the water bottles all through the bike and all through the run. So not only did he do a little bit of pacing with me on the run, but every time they hand you the water bottle on the bike, what they're doing is they're running with you to get it properly. And I think he said he ran like, if I'm not mistaken, I said like 20, 24K each day, just trying to get me the water bottle. So, it's a lot. It's a lot.
And then in and out of the car, in and out.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So, and you are so right that the team, it's so hard to be, before you do one of them, I don't think you have an appreciation for what a big part the team is, but it really is, like, it's the 3 or 4, however many people are doing it with you there. You're all in the race.
When I look back at your history of events, you were kind of introduced into triathlon at a younger age, took some time off with the family, and then got back into it again. I believe you said when Ironman went to Whistler, it kind of got you back into it because it's in your backyard. So you haven't really been doing this for a super long time, but you've had a lot of great success. What do you attribute that success to? Is it, do you have great coaching? Is it your own motivation again, that iron will of yours? What's this giving you success in the triathlon world so far?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. I've had 2 coaches, and I've also gone through the process on my own. So the first, I think 3 or 4 years, I just used, I bought a triathlon book. You probably know Joe Friel. So I bought his triathlon Bible, or, one of those triathlon books that he's put out. And I think the first 3 Ironman I did, I just followed his program. And then I got a coach to mix it up. And then I got another coach to, again, mix it up. And it's all been super interesting in that respect. I guess, I think if anything I could say, swimming as a kid, I think swimming, aside from the fact that swimming as a kid gives you the skills that you don't, swimming's a harder thing to learn as an adult, and it's more skill based than some of the other things like, cycling and running. So having that as a kid is important, but I think the work ethic that you get from swimming, because, as a kid, you swim like 5 mornings and then you swim 5 evenings. And so that sort of constant work ethic that you're, the discipline from that, and the idea that you just put in this work all the time. I think that's probably more than anything that sort of developed that work ethic in me. And I guess the process of working to get somewhere.
And would you say that you're probably a type A person then?
I am, yeah, for sure.
Like most Ironman athletes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've touched on your athletic background here pretty good. Let's get into the 2 minutes in transition, and then we'll learn a little bit more about you personally. So when we get to the race and the athletes are all meeting each other, they'll have a little something to pick up on with you. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So these are supposed to be quick answers if you can, and let's go.
All right.
What is still on your bucket list as far as events?
Oh, the number one and number 2 are like or number 3, the Norseman, that sort of an iron distance try in Norway, the Walkman, which is also a swim run in Norway, and then the Attilo Swim Run World Championships in Sweden, where it actually started. They just epic looking events.
Okay. And what's the last piece of gear that you purchased?
You know what? I just bought some form goggles. So swimming on your own, I find it really hard to swim on my own. And so any little things I can use to sort of make it more interesting, and they're pretty cool. So helps a lot.
So what pays the bills in your house? What's your regular day job?
I'm a realtor.
And in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Who is your favorite athlete?
Oh boy. Well, you know what? It's always changing, but I'd have to say Lionel right now.
All right, yeah. All right, I'll finish off with a very Vancouver-centric question for you. What is your best time on the grouse grind?
Oh, I think I've done, when I was a little bit younger, I think I was sort of in that 40-minute range pretty regularly. Nothing, I've got friends that are, super fast on it, but yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm a few years away from that, I have to tell you, though.
Yeah, that's okay. So that gets us through the transition round then. What can you tell us a little bit about what your life was like before Ironman, or before you came into Ultra? What sort of things were you doing in your life then?
Well, I guess before I got into triathlon again, it was really just about, my kids were a lot younger. So I think I was running a bit to sort of stay in shape. I had a goal, I think in like 2008, 2009, my only goal around that time was, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could run the Boston Marathon? And, what could this was a pretty big sort of bucket list, growing up, you think, running the Boston Marathon would be the coolest thing. And so, as same with going to the Hawaii Ironman. So for me as a kid, seeing the Hawaii Ironman on TV when I was a kid was, pretty special. So I, chipped away at that and eventually was able to get there and do that. And then, like you say, with the Ironman moving to Whistler, I just thought, oh, it's in my backyard. It seems like it was meant for me to do that, and I better take that one off my bucket list.
And you said that kind of revolved a little bit more around your family life, and when you had your kids were younger, you were more the family man. Have they Have they followed along with your career? Do they support dad and come to the races? And have they picked up on this solo sport thing, or what kind of sports are they into, if any?
Yeah, they do come to all the races. I guess one of the things that I think I really love about it too is that you get to go to, all the interesting places where the races are held. I mean, Penticton, which is right in our backyard, is beautiful, so it's great to go there. But some of the other places, when we went and did the Attillo in Switzerland, I mean, that was just this really epic trip for us. We went to Switzerland and Paris and France and England. So that was pretty cool. So traveling together, and then we've been to Hawaii, so many times for Kona and not for Kona. It's a wonderful place to go. My daughter swims. She's still a competitive swimmer. She swims with our club, the Vancouver Dolphins, the Canadian Dolphins. And my son plays soccer, so he's not. I mean, that's more of a team sport. That was. I had no idea about. I never did. Like I swam, so following, sort of learning about soccer as he grew interested in it was pretty interesting. And he still plays soccer now, and so.
And what are their ages now?
My son is 18 and my daughter 16.
Okay. One of the other things I brought up in the introduction is that you are a plant-based athlete. You said you've done that since 2015. How did you come about making that decision, and what exactly are your dietary kind of restrictions that you follow?
So, when I started it, I just wanted to get leaner. Triathletes are always, trying to get leaner for the most part. And so I think it was around 2015, we were up in Whistler. I just finished the Whistler Ironman, or the Ironman Canada in 2015, and somewhere I saw the Rich Roll's book. I think it was Finding Ultra, and I thought, and Rich Roll, I think he's around the same age as me, and so he was looking pretty lean, and I thought, okay, well, hey, maybe this will be my ticket. So I just said, all right, that's it, in my sort of typical type A fashion. I'm vegan now, and so. Ultimately the process was to just get leaner, and I actually gained some weight because it's a learning process, like learning how to eat properly. It definitely takes some work, but the journey was really, and still is, super interesting. And because throughout the process, I learned not only about, the benefits of plant-based eating, but also the other ramifications, which I hadn't really given too much thought to, like how it affects the environment, and of course animal cruelty. And so through the whole process, I sort of evolved into this, from 2015, where I just wanted to get lean, to now where I feel like it's just this whole, sort of it's a holistic approach to, what it's doing. I personally just don't feel that our planet has too many people on it to support by feeding people animals. It just isn't sustainable in so many different ways, like for the environment, for what we're doing. And sorry, I guess I'm on a soapbox here. I didn't mean to do that.
That's fine. Yeah.
So that was really where I started and where I got to. And now I don't think too much about what I eat at all. I mean, I have a smoothie every day. I eat, lots of great food. My wife, I think about 3 years ago, my wife decided to do the same thing. So both my wife and I are plant-based now.
Is there like a certain website that you go to find like new recipes and things like that? And like, how did you find your meal planning in the first place? Well,
I really have to thank my wife, because she mostly did that. In terms of she was so awesome, and obviously she still is, but particularly with the beginning, because she would make things for me, and she would make these two separate meals. So she's making something for her and the kids, something for me. Now that she's plant-based, she's making stuff for us and for them. But I think one of the probably the best resource would be the book How Not to Die. and it's by Dr. Michael Greger, and he's got a cookbook too. And I guess he's got a daily top 10 of foods. And so it's important, I think, to stay healthy on a plant-based diet. You have to really make sure that because you can be just as unhealthy on a plant-based diet as, on a non-plant-based diet.
Yeah.
You have to eat the right foods. Your body needs certain things. So following the daily top 10 by Dr. Michael Greger was a big part. And again, now that I don't even think about it, I just, those are the things I need every day.
You are part of something called the Wadi Inc. team, or the elite team. What is the Wadi Inc. elite team? And tell us a little bit about that.
So Wadi Inc. was founded by Sean Watkins and Heather Jackson. Heather Jackson, you may know, is a triathlete pro. And so they started a clothing line with some partners, and which they've actually, if I'm not mistaken, have just released a sort of press release saying that they're actually parting ways with the company they started. But Wadi Inc. is basically a triathlete team. They've also got a gravel racing team, and so it's like-minded people that like the gear that was designed by Wadi. And so one of the local triathletes, I think I was first introduced to it by one of the local triathletes here, Rachael Mcbride, who's a pro triathlete, and she is one of their athletes. And so I think that, seeing, because she's a gritty racer too. I just like that idea of here's a bunch of people that aren't necessarily, what you might think of as triathletes. They're just a bunch of people who really like to get out and suffer a bit. And so I like the designs, the influences. I think Wadi also is, from a certain demographic where he's influenced by a lot of that sort of culture that I might have sort of thought was cool when I was 18, 19, 20, 21. And so it makes me feel a little bit, nostalgic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do they have other things going on besides the clothing? Like you say, you get together with these like-minded people. So are there camps and programs or race meetups or?
Well, it's obviously we haven't been able to do a camp for a while, but you go down to California and you're on the beach and basically it's a week of swim, bike, and running with all the other people. And you meet the team also has other sponsors, ISM Seats, Herbalife. And so you meet a bunch of the other sponsors for the team and get a sense of what they're doing to help you achieve your goals.
Barry, thank you very much for sharing your time with me today and letting us get to know you so that when we all meet back in Penticton this July, fingers crossed, people will know a little bit more about you now and they'll be able to approach you and ask you about some of these things that you've shared with us. And I know you've been listening to the podcast, so hopefully that gives you that in to start a conversation with the other athletes as well.
I thank you so much. And I'm, as you know, we started the sort of Facebook informal Gab page, and any of the athletes that want to reach out, I love to talk about the race. I've raced in that area, so if anybody has any questions about it, I'm happy to do it. It's been great listening to the podcast and hearing some of the other athletes so far, and so any of them that want to reach out, please do through the the Facebook page, and I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody.
Yeah, great. Well, we look forward to meeting you and your family in July in Penticton.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for putting on the race.
All right, thanks a lot.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultraman Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises brought to you by Ultraman Canada. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.